Inspiring interviews with today's top landlords. This is the Rental Income Podcast. And now, Dan Lane.
You two wanted to start buying rental properties, but the thing that was holding you back was coming up with the money to get started.
Yeah, that's correct. So we both worked full-time jobs, and
we actually have several part-time jobs as well.
And we just couldn't figure out how we were going to save enough money to buy enough rentals.
The truth is, you need money to buy rental properties, but it doesn't necessarily have to be your money. You can use other people's money, and that's what Corey and Bethany figured out how to do. On the podcast today, we're going to talk about how they found the money. We'll talk about how they structured everything and what they did with it. We'll talk about how they've used the money to buy rental properties. Joining us on the show today from Kansas City are Corey and Bethany Wendland. We'll take a really quick break to thank our sponsors. We'll come right back and we'll jump right into the interview. A good deal on a rental property isn't going to last very long. To win properties today, you need to move quickly when a deal comes on the market, but it takes time to analyze a property. I want to let you know about an app where you can analyze deals on your phone in seconds. It's called Ask Rick, that's RIC for Rental Income Calculator. You can analyze a deal with the push of a button. You can figure out the rent, your mortgage payment, your expenses, and figure out the cash flow. If the numbers make sense, you can make an offer right there on the app, or you can send a calendar invite to your agent to see the property in person. Ask Rick is currently offering a free 7-day trial. Just search for Ask Rick in the App Store or go to Just Ask Rick. That's RIC, justaskrick.com. Whether you've been buying rental properties for years or you're looking to buy your very first rental property, the very first thing you want to do before you go out and find a great deal is to figure out your financing. The lender that I recommend is Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. She's a nationwide lender, and her specialty is helping investors finance rental properties. Chaley has a special limited time offer just for our listeners. She will pay for your appraisal up to $500 when you close a loan with her. Just mention you heard about this on the Rental Income Podcast. If you want more details or if you're ready to get started today, just go to ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com. NMLS 42056. Before we get into this, I just want to understand your financial situation a little bit better. So you guys both have full-time jobs. You also have part-time jobs. Did you try to save money for down payments, or was that just not really an option?
Yeah, so we have kind of been talking about this for over a year or so, and I'd say for the last year, we've been trying to save money for a down payment, but to come up with 20% of a down payment for a duplex is quite a lot of money. So it just felt like the goal of getting a rental was 8 to 10 years down the road instead of right now.
Right.
So that's when we tried to think about how we could do it now.
Well, so let's rewind to that day. So it was almost a year ago. It was in June of 2020. And I was at work, and it was mid-morning, and I had signed up or done some sort of search on Zillow. And it was kind of shocking. My heart dropped a little bit when I saw what it was. But it was a duplex that was in our neighborhood, and it was within view or sight from our driveway. And so that got me like really excited. And Bethany and I had been talking about purchasing a rental. And so having just purchased our primary residence in the neighborhood, we weren't 100% set up with our finances and being able to purchase that duplex on our own with an investment loan or two investment loans, as we came to find out, because they're two parcels. So throughout the rest of that day, then we had to come up with different ways or think of different ways that we could try and make this happen. We knew we didn't have much time, and we knew that family was the first place to start. And luckily, we have a family member that we were able to talk to that night, and it was almost like an emergency meeting, if you will, because Bethany and I knew that this opportunity wasn't going to last long and that we needed to act. And so we met with the family member, and we weren't really sure how the deal was going to work. We knew it was just a great opportunity. And so that's where we really had to figure out like how we were going to structure the deal, because the deal needed to be comparable to like the stock market return. So if the family member was going to pull money out of the stock market, we needed to have something that's comparable to, say, 8 to 10% return or even more.
Knowing that they already have a rental property and are kind of interested in stocks and markets and investing anyway, it was kind of easy to just come up front and just say, hey, we're interested in investing and we want to know if you want to partner with us. So that's kind of where the topic started. And then we were wondering, are we just going to borrow the money from you and have a loan with you, or are you going to become our partner? And we decided to go the partnership route. So to start, the structure was based off of like the percentage of the down payment. So for example, if our down payment was $40,000 for each duplex,
which is 20% of a $200,000 purchase.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So if Corey and I brought $10,000 to the table and our family member was fronting the rest, which was $70,000, we had approximately
for the whole duplex.
We had approximately 13% ownership.
Okay.
So then when it came time to collecting rents and divvying out the money, we got 13% and our family member got the rest.
Okay. So your family member / investor was just putting up the down payment. So this was your down payment, and then you were going to go to a bank to finance the rest of it?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. So you guys put in about 10,000, they put in about 70,000, and then what kind of interest rate were you going to pay them, or did you pay them?
So we're actually paying them a 10% interest on the down payment loan.
Okay. And that's paid monthly?
It is, yes. So we make a monthly payment to them, and from that monthly payment is principal and interest pay down.
And the money that you're getting to pay them the interest every month, is that coming from the rent on the property?
So we do use our cash flow towards that for now, but then we also pay the rest of that monthly payment from our W-2 jobs.
Let's look at some actual numbers to see how this really works. So how much is the rent on one of the properties?
So on one of the properties, the rent is $1,550.
Okay. So you get $1,550, and then how much is your mortgage payment?
So our mortgage payment is $736.
Okay. So that's, roughly
principal
half.
And interest.
Okay. Principal and interest. That's what you're paying the bank.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens to the rest of the money?
So then there's taxes and insurance, and then the rest of the money is then split out. We get paid a management fee for managing the property, which is 10%. And then after that, there's about $400 cash flow left. So then our family member gets the 85% of the cash flow, and then we collect about 15% of the cash flow.
Okay.
Second part then would also be the equity or principal pay down of the 30-year loan. And so just adding in the 85% ownership then is also taken into account for the equity pay down per month of that loan.
This sounds really complicated. How do you guys keep track of all this?
Lots of spreadsheets. So I have several different spreadsheets for each property. And within the spreadsheet, there's a tab for our loan. So the down payment loan from the family member. And then the other tab is the mortgage and the rental information. So on this spreadsheet, all the numbers are laid out. So it's the rent payment minus the principal and interest payment to the bank, minus taxes, insurance, and then minus our management fee. And then the cash flow and the equity is left. And I just keep track of that each month and divvy out the money on the 15th of each month.
Okay, so you get your portion of the cash flow, and you're just basically putting that aside then, and then your goal then is to eventually pay off your investor?
Yeah, so we make a payment to our investor every month. And so if let's just say our cash flow is $50, we use that $50 for the payment to our investor.
And you've actually paid off the investor for one of the properties already, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So that was in March of this year. We were able to buy them out of one of the sides of the duplexes, and then the whole cycle repeats. So then we just take the other side of the duplex, and now they've got, let's say, they had 100%. So now if we make a principal and interest payment based off of the down payment to them, then after 1 month, then let's say that's like 2 or 3% of ownership that we're gaining in that side. And then from there, the whole cycle just repeats, and we just work that all the way down to zero, and then move on to the next unit.
Okay, so your investor is really just there as a short-term, temporary tool to come up with the down payment.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, and you guys have two duplexes, so you've got four rental units, right? That's your portfolio right now?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. So you've got the investor out of one of them, and then how long will it take, in your opinion, to get the other three paid off?
So we bought the first one out within 8 months, which is a lot faster than we anticipated. So we're hoping that we can get the next one paid off in 2 years, and then the third one in another 2 years, and the last one 2 years following. So we're on kind of a 6-year plan right now.
Now, what about if something major comes up? Hot water heater goes, the roof needs to be replaced. There's some major maintenance thing that comes up. How are you guys going to handle that? Because it sounds like you probably don't have a huge cash reserve. Like, how are you going to pay for something big?
So any sort of maintenance expense that's long-term. So like HVAC system, a roof, hot water heater. We actually had one that went out on the unit that we purchased. We had that go out in March as we were in the middle of refinancing that property into Bethany and I's names. And so we end up splitting all of those costs 50-50. And so then the way we view it is, when we're doing the cash out or we're doing a refinance of the property into our name, then the other portion of that is to take into account is the appreciation. So anything that we're adding value into the property, then that's coming back in the end when we do an appraisal, and then get that any sort of appreciation, if there is any, to add that into the mix.
What about getting the loan? So the initial loan that you got, was it in your names and the investors' names?
Yeah, so it was in the family member's name and then my name as well.
Okay.
And that was the case on all 4 of those units.
Okay. And then once you pay the investor off, do you refi and put the loan just in your name?
So we refied, and I think I was the main borrower, and then Bethany was the co-borrower.
Okay.
So like on this primary that we currently own, we actually have Bethany as the sole member or person on the loan. And then there's just several different reasons why we kept myself off of it. It had to do with DTI and trying to qualify to get the thing going. But after we've seasoned ourselves for at least a year, then that starts to open up our options in terms of working around different number of loans, and then adding Bethany on certain loans and then me not on one, and those sorts of things.
Sure.
So it's just trying to navigate that with the lender, honestly.
Now, did you guys consider doing the Burr method? I mean, the way that you guys did it, I think is very unique, but I could see that since you have access to this capital, the Burr method could be possible. Did you guys consider doing that?
No, that wasn't really something that we wanted to or had in our plan.
Okay, well, I want to see how you've used this money. So, Bethany, why don't you tell me about your first rental?
Yes. So one side has a long-term tenant of 6 years, and the other side just had someone move in June when we were looking to purchase in July.
Okay. And how's everything been working out so far?
Really well. Both of our tenants are great tenants. We don't have any issues with rent payments or anything like that. The only thing we've had come up is that one water heater that we had to replace, and that's really it.
Okay, awesome. So that one sounds great. It's working out awesome. And then the other property that you found was initially a for sale by owner?
Yeah, that's correct. So if you just fast forward, from July, so we closed the beginning of August, and the second property came up online. Again, this was Zillow. I think I'd gotten a notification online, like there weren't any signs in the yard. So this time we had no indication that it was coming on the market, and that one popped up through a Zillow notification, FSBO. And we saw that as an opportunity to try and approach that seller with seller financing. So
Okay, so you tried to do seller financing. So that you had done your relative doing the financing for that first property, but the second one you tried to do seller financing, but I guess it didn't work out.
Yeah. So after we finished the first one, that family member thought that they would go into another rental property on their own. I think we got their feet wet in rental properties in Kansas City, and they wanted to look for something else. So we knew they were looking for something else on their own. And then when this deal with seller financing fell through, we called them for another late night emergency meeting and, said, well, we have the opportunity to do this again if you guys are interested, and kind of laid out the deal with them again. And we structured the second deal the same way as the first.
Awesome. Wow. Okay. So that's great. So everything is working out now. This property was a little bit more challenging. Talk to me about some of the things that have gone on. So I guess the first thing is one of the units was vacant, and you guys actually filled the unit before you closed on the property.
Yeah, that's right. So one of the side was vacant for about 4 months. The seller had a bad tenant in there and kind of destroyed the place. So he fixed it up a little bit, and it just sat on the rental market, and he wasn't able to fill it for several months. So I had asked him, with no knowledge of filling a rental, by the way, I had asked him, well, can we give it a shot and use, take some pictures and post it online with, through some of the websites that we had looked through. And he was like, yeah, sure. If you can fill it, that would help me out in the next month, but before we close. So we did. We posted it on a couple of different websites and on Facebook Marketplace. And in, I think, 1 week, we had 4 or 5 showings and got it filled a week later.
Wow. What do you think the difference was? Well, why do you think he had trouble, but you filled it pretty easily?
Well, I think just the status of that unit, well, the whole duplex in general, there was a lot of deferred maintenance and his history of poor tenants. I think he was a pretty laid back landlord, to be honest. And I just think that he wasn't very aggressive in keeping up the place or turning it over.
Right.
He was also using an agent to fill the property. And I just think since he was kind of hands off and the agent wasn't really doing their job, that it just sat there.
Awesome. Okay, so the benefit to you, even though you didn't own the property, is that as soon as you closed, you were getting full rent for the whole property.
Exactly, yeah. So the way we worked that deal was the lease was through us, and then we collected the security deposit and the first month's rent, and then at closing, we just divvied up the 22 days that we owed to the seller for that time.
Now, the other side, there was a long-term tenant, but he gave notice right after you guys closed on the property.
Yeah, so let's talk about him a little bit. So he was a little bit of a mess, and so when we did our inspection, by inspection I mean I walked the property and walked through both sides of the duplex when we were purchasing it. When I walked through his side, I immediately knew that once he left, it was going to be an issue in terms of turning that unit because he was a mechanic. He'd been there for seven years. When you go up the stairs on the walls, there's like handprints of like grease, and there was a path from downstairs. Since this is a split level coming in from the garage, there was a path that had been worn on the carpet from where he had walked in and out, and then upstairs into the living room and even the bedrooms. There were stains, and it was just matted down. And so I knew that the flooring was going to have to be replaced. And so we knew that. And then even in the kitchen, the disposal didn't work. And several other things in there were just outdated, and it really needed to be gone through. The bathroom in there, the toilet next to the toilet actually smelled like urine. And so that was one that we knew was going to be a headache. And so when he put in his notified us that he wanted to leave and was going to be moving about a month after we purchased and closed on this property, that was a little bit sooner than we had anticipated. And so we were just trying to honor the verbal lease that he had with the previous owner. And so when he said he wanted to leave, we were in agreement with that and just wanted to get him out of there, even though it was only about 30 days after we had closed. So,
how much did it cost to fix up that unit?
I think total that was close to about $10,000.
How did you work that out with your investor? Like, were they? I assume that they put in some of that money.
Yeah, so we split that 50-50 in terms of the cost, and it's one of those. Obviously, when you just close on a property and you're putting money down for that down payment, and it's a decent sum of money, you don't want to go 30 days later and have to put down another $10,000 in cost. But
how did that conversation go? Were they upset that they were having to put in more money so quickly?
Not upset, but just, I think their words were kind of like, it is what it is.
Right.
And so we were all in the agreement. So,
were you able to get higher rent now that it was all fixed up?
Yeah, so that unit was actually renting for $1,225 a month. And after we cleaned it up and turned it, we are now getting $1,700 a month.
I think the smartest thing that Corey and Bethany are doing is that they're taking really good care of their investor. They're making on-time payments. They're getting their loans paid off early. I mean, they're really just doing what they promised the investor they would do. And I think if you do what you say you're going to do and the investor's making money, they're going to want to keep loaning you money. And who knows, that they might even refer you to other friends that have money and are looking for a return. So keep up the great work, guys. I think you're on the right path. If anybody is interested in investing in the Kansas City area, Corey is a licensed realtor in both Kansas and Missouri, and he would be happy to talk to you about local investments. If you want to reach out to him, I've got his contact information on the website. You can find it at rentalincomepodcast.com/episode 327. I'd like to thank today's sponsor for making this episode possible. It's Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. If you're looking to buy a rental property, whether it's your first property or you want to add to your portfolio, the lender that I recommend is Chaley Ridge. She's a nationwide lender, and her specialty is helping investors finance rental properties. She has a special offer just for our listeners. If you finance a loan through her, she will pay for your appraisal up to $500. If you want some more details or you want to set up a time to talk to Chaley, just go to ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE, lendinggroup.com. NMLS 42056. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast today. If this is your first time here, make sure you subscribe. We put out new interviews every single Tuesday, and if you subscribe, you'll get notified as soon as they come out. My name is Dan Lane, and this has been the Rental Income Podcast.